Welcome to today's lesson. Today we shall be looking at flight. Say flight. When we talk of flight, we mean an object working against gravity. Alright. In our earlier discussion, we discussed the properties of air. If you remember vividly, we talked about air. We say air consists of particles too small to be seen, is it not? We said if condensation and evaporation can actually transform to vapor of air and transform back to water, then air consists of particles too small to be seen, and therefore air has what? Mass. Yes. On a windy day, you can feel the pressure of air against your face. Wind is simply defined as a moving air. Air exerts pressure. Air presses hard against all sides of everything it touches. It never stops pressing. Is it not? Yes. You want to experience air, when you fly your shirt, you understand what we're talking about. Okay? Not only that, air does not exert the same amount of pressure everywhere. Air has a mass and exerts pressure downward. The pressure that air exerts downward is as a result of what? Gravity force. Say force of gravity. So the higher you go, the less air there is above. Therefore, the lower the air pressure. Yes, true or false? True. As you go higher above, the air pressure reduces, because you are tending towards space, is it not? Getting closer to the moon. Now, you know very well that air is limited in space. Yes, you know that very well. And so, you don't expect the region closer to space to be more concentrated with air, is it not? So, as you go higher, air what? Drops. The pressure of air what? Decreases. You have probably felt a change in air pressure if you have been in a what? Fast moving elevator going up a tall building. Is it not? You begin to hear a sound from your ear, is it not? The thing that's actually happening there is that because you are moving from down to the top, you are moving from a region where air pressure is high to a region where air pressure is low. The air pressure inside your body does not change, but as you are going higher, the pressure does what? Decreases, is it not? Therefore, air will tend to want to move from your body to the environment, because it is natural movement, which we will learn as we proceed. Okay? And that is why you hear that kind of windy sound in your ear. This happens because air tends to flow from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure. Air pressure increases as you descend due to more air molecules pressing down from above. So as you are coming down, the air pressure will do what? Will increase again. But when you are going up, the air pressure will what? Decrease. Air takes up space and air has mass. True or false? True. Sometimes people use the term mass and weight to mean the same thing. But you and I know that mass and weight are not the same. So what do you think is the difference? You may recall in our last class I will talk about mass as the total quantity of matter a body possesses, is it not? Yes, we say mass is the quantity of matter in a body or of a body. Mass is the total quantity of matter of an object or substance. On the other hand, weight is the force of gravity that is pulling a mass downward. Let's assume this is a teddy bear now. The mass of the teddy bear will be each of all these small round shape you are seeing here. That will be the mass when put together. But the weight will be the force of gravity pulling the entire mass. Do you get it now? Yes, that is weight. So you look at weight is a downward pressing force produced by the mass due to the what? Force of gravity. Now, we know that gravity is the force that tends to pull on you downward, is it not? Gravity is not the same in everywhere. Gravity is more concentrated as you tend towards the center. Okay? But mass will never change. mass remains the same, because if you count this ball, that is the total number of ball you get. It will never ever change. So mass may remain the same, weight may change. Why? Because gravity changes from location to location. Is it not? Yes. When we look at flight, for an object to fly, there are 4 major forces that act on object or any object that is flying through the air. These forces are: number 1, gravity; number 2, drag; number 3, lift; and number 4, thrust. Say thrust. We are going to look at these 4 forces and how they are related in terms of why objects fly. First of all, gravity. When we talk of gravity, first of all, you must know that gravity is an invisible force which pulls object down. It's an invisible force, you cannot see it. Objects with a large mass pull and attract objects with less mass towards them. Objects with a large mass pull and attract objects with less mass towards them because the earth has a very large mass. All objects near it are pulled towards its center. This downward pull is what we call the force of what? Gravity, and it's work against things that are trying to what? Fly. You already know gravity. Yes, everything you throw upward always come down. Why? Because of force of what? Gravity. That is why when you throw a ball, the ball will always what? Come down, because force of gravity is pulling the ball. Let's now look at the second force of flight. Drag. Say drag. Drag is a force that slows you down and works in the opposite direction that you are actually what? Traveling. Can you see the arrow? As the car is going forward, it is experiencing a drag. The problem here is that the car will go forward because the drag is not strong enough to stop it. Okay, you experience this also when you are running and then maybe your uniform or your shirt is not buttoned, or even the air, you hear them passing your ears, your faces, is it not? Even your eyes, at times you bring water from it. That force that is acting against your motion is called drag. And the more your speed, the more your drag. Okay, the more the speed, the more the drag. The more you are running, the more the drag or air resistance. The more you are running, the more air resistance will affect you. Air resistance in this case is called the drag. Okay, force that help to slow the car down. Drag depend on shape. A shape with low drag is usually long, thin, and smooth, rounded at the what? Front. And because more narrow at the back, drag also depends on speed. Drag tends to increase as the speed what? Increase. So you see, one of the reasons why cars are made the way they are made is because of this drag. So when the car is driving with a high speed, there will be room for the drag to escape easily without destroying or affecting the motion of the car to a very what? Negative extent. Let's now look at another force called the lift. Lift is an upward force that tends to pull objects above what? The ground. Lift is an upward force. If the lift force is greater than the gravity, the object will what? Stay in the air. So lift is a force that supports you to go higher. Okay, and that lift we are talking about depends on the shape. Lift will be greater with an airfoil shaped wing, just like this plane you are seeing here. If it has this kind of shaping wing, lift will support it to go up. Why? Because the lift has what we call angle of what? Attack. The lift, it depends on what we call angle of what? Attack. When we talk of angle of attack, we are talking about angle in which the wing is tilted into the air flow. Now, lift depends upon the speed also. If the lift increase as speed increase, lift depends on also the direction. If acts perpendicular to the direction of object movement. So if an object is moving in the air horizontally, the lift will be acting underneath, and that is what we mean by what? Perpendicular. Okay, perpendicular is when an horizontal line and then you now draw a vertical line under it. It's called a perpendicular. Okay, then the fourth force we are looking at is called thrust. Thrust is the force that moves an airplane forward. Thrust is usually produced by a plane's jet engine. So if you want to relate thrust to that car initially, the thrust will be the engine of the car. If you want to relate thrust to human being, the thrust will be your energy which you use to walk against drag. Do you see it now? Yes. The engine thrust has to move the airplane forward faster than the drag can push it toward backward. Do you see it now? So when your thrust is greater than your drag, you will go forward. And when your lift is greater than your gravity, you will go upward. These are for materials that can fly. A propeller or jet engine pushes a plane forward through the air. Jet engines are the big cylindrical shaped hardware mounted on the wings of large commercial airplanes. Alright? What we are trying to say is that for your plane to move or for an object to move, its thrust, which is the power, which is the energy used to move forward, must be greater than the drag. Okay? Imagine you are falling down from the sky. Gravity is acting not against you this time now. It's pushing you down, it's supporting your movement. There's a drag that you experience, but because gravity is pushing you, you are now greater than this drag. So drag is just the opposing force that opposes a thrust. Okay? Now, we want to look at the physics behind flight. When we talk of the physics behind flight, physics has to do with how matter and energy are what? Related. Okay? How does this air we are talking about now affect energy of motion? That is what we mean by physics behind flight. There is a man called Isaac Newton. He is one of the greatest scientists that has lived. He was the one that discovered the force of what? Gravity, and gave a lot of calculations and information about gravitational force and motion. Today we are going to be looking at three of his important law of what? Motion. His first law is known as the Newton's first law of what? Motion. It says that every object in a state of motion tend to remain in that state of motion unless an external force is applied to it. What he's simply saying is that every object will continue to move and nothing will stop it from moving except it is an external force. Okay? Or an object will remain in the same position unless something pushes it to move. That is what Newton is trying to say, relating to what? Motion. To you now, is this law true? Consider your car. Your car will not move unless the engine generates an energy or a force to move it. True or false? True. Now, if your car is moving, it will continue to move unless you generate another force to mash the brake. Which force will be generated by the car engine also to stop the car? That is what Newton is telling you in the first law now. Okay? Every object will remain in a state of motion or we be stopped by an external force. Every object in a state of motion will remain in that state of motion unless an external force is what? Applied to it. The second law of Newton says acceleration is produced whenever a force acts on a mass. Acceleration means for an object to move from one speed to another, or for an object to move from one location to another. Okay, let's use your car for an example. You are in gear 1, you are moving. Newton will tell you that for you to enter gear 2, there must be a force that must carry the entire mass of the car to enter gear 2. So the more energy you apply, the more acceleration you get. Do you get it now? So the greater the mass of the object being accelerated, the greater the amount of force needed to accelerate the object. Do you get it now? For example, larger airplanes that have to carry more people or cargo must have more powerful engines to exert a greater force on the body of the engine and get it to move forward and fly. That is why an airplane has more than one powerful engine to power it. Newton's third law says for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, or to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, or you say action and reaction are equal and opposite. What do we mean? Look at this example. As the propellers shoot up the air in the front of them to generate thrust, at the same time they are also shooting the used up air out through the backside in the same quantity and at the same speed as it is being used. Look at another example. Another example can be seen by examining the air that moves over the airfoil shaped wings of an aeroplane. It comes off the end of the wing and shoots downward. Look at the way the wing of the plane is designed. As it's moving in air, the gravitational force and the drag affecting it will not have so much great effect on it because of the shape of the plane wing, which is slim and sliding. So as the air presses through it, it will escape. But when the lift, which is the air generated by the engine now, pushes from under, the plane is like a wing. So the under, as the air is coming from the under, there is enough space to push both wings, and then it will raise the plane higher. Do you get it now? Yes. Another law we are looking at is called law of flight. Law of flight says that the air particles always travel from high pressure to low pressure areas. True. I've explained this using the word elevator to you. Let's use your typical example, your AC room. When you put on the AC at home, you have high air pressure there because everywhere is not cool, is it not? Yes. The reason why you close the door is that you don't want this air to escape. True or false? True. When you now open the door, the air will escape from your room to outside. Then at some point, your room will no longer be cold because the outside air will now exert more pressure and then move from outside to the house. Look at your gas cylinder. Why is it that your gas cylinder is heavy? It is because of pressure. Say pressure. Your gas cylinder will pump gas into the cylinder, and you know gas enjoy free space, is it not? They like to move freely. Now you have confined this gas to a small space. It will be having high pressure. By the time you open it, the gas will now move from the high pressure container to the environment. That is what the law of flight is telling us, that air particles always travel from high pressure to low pressure area. Okay? For example, in a cold winter day, when you are in a warm room, the air pressure is low because the particles in the warm air are spread farther apart than those in the cold air. Now the air outside is cold and the air particles are much closer together and the pressure is greater. If you now open a window, you find that the cold air seems to come in very quickly. Why? Because the outside that is cold has the what? Pressure higher than the inside that is what? Hot. Just like the reverse of the AC I just gave you now. Is it not? Yes. This is because the air molecules are moving from a crowded area, a region of high pressure, to a less crowded area, a region of what? Low pressure. Let's now look at Bernoulli's principle. Bernoulli's principle says that as the speed of a fluid increases, the pressure what? Decreases. What do we mean by a fluid? A fluid is anything that can move. Water can move. Water is a fluid. Air can move. Air is a fluid. Okay? Air can be thought of as what? A fluid. Therefore, fast-moving air has lower pressure than slow-moving air. True or false? True. Because fast-moving air has a larger area. Let's say you open your gas cylinder small so that gas molecules start to what? Escape. You discover that because you open it small, the speed at which they want to come out will cause the gas to be making noise. Is it not? But by the time you open it wide, the pressure will be low because there's enough room for the gas particles to escape. That's what I tell you. That as the speed of a fluid increases, the pressure decreases. Air can be thought of as what? A fluid. Do you get it now? Yes. So as well as that, the law of light states that air will always travel from high pressure area to low pressure area. Do you see it now? Yes. Bernoulli's principle now helps to explain that an aircraft can achieve lift because of the shape of its wings. Is it not? How does the shape of the wings now affect it? Look at the law. As the speed of a fluid increases, the pressure what? Decreases. As the speed of the plane increases and the lift of the plane increases, and then the gravity and the drag are decreasing, the plane will now what? Fly. Is it not? They are shaped so that is the wings now of the plane. They are shaped so that the air flow faster over the top of the wing and slower underneath. The high air pressure under the wings will therefore push up against the bottom of the wings in order to try and move to an area with low pressure. Do you get it now? So as the pressure is decreasing above and the jet engine is generating more lift, it will, because the pressure of the lift now is now higher than the pressure of the drag and gravity, because you are now going higher now, it will now push the plane higher because the air wants to go to where? A region where there's what? Low pressure. Do you get it now? Yes, I believe you get it. So this is what we are saying. Fast moving air particles, you can see it. You can see the airfoil shape. Then you can see the slow moving air particles pushing the wings upward, and then you have the lift that is what? Generated. Living things that what? Fly. Besides what we have discussed, there is a wide variety of living things on earth that are capable of what? Flying. Of course, the most obvious or popular ones are the birds, some small rodents, and insects. Let's find out. The question that often has us scratching our head is, how do these living things soar and glide through the air with such ease? Why do they fly so easily? Why? We humans are simply not built for what? For flight. We are ideally or naturally structured for standing, walking, or running. Okay? Why flight is just not part of our repertoire. Okay? Flight is not part of our gene. It's not part of our training. We do not look like birds, rodents, or insects. So why would we be able to what? Do the same thing that they can? Truth. But exactly what is it about this group of things that allows them to take advantage of the properties of air and forces of light in order to keep themselves in the sky for a very long period of what? Time. Let's look at birds. Any living or non-living thing trying to take flight will have two forces working against them. True or false? True. Gravity and what? Drag. They will also have two forces helping them to fly. What are the two forces? Lift and what? Thrust. Is it not? The reason they are successful every time is that the sum of the forces working in favor of them, that is the lift and the thrust, is always greater than the sum of the forces working against them, which is what? Gravity and what? Drag. You see it now? To begin their flight, bird must first generate enough momentum. Do you get me now? Which is generated from their thrust, okay? Using their small legs as well as the flapping motion of their wings to move themselves forward. Now, once they have generated a significant amount of thrust, birds will tilt the angle of their wings up into the direction that are moving to get lifted off the ground. Do you see it now? So if you look, the principle of the plane is copied from how the principle of the bird work. These wings will catch enough wind underneath to push them up into the sky. However, their wings cannot simply stay in this position to fly. They must continuously flap their wings in a forward and rotating what? Motion. Why? To push wind behind them and continue thrusting through the what? Air. Birds generate thrust by flapping their wings. You see it now? So the thrust they generate by flapping their wings generates lift, which will push their wings up. Remember, as they are going higher, what happens? The air decreases. Therefore, the thrust and lift generated will keep pushing them. Bats are the only mammals known to date that are capable to fly and take off into air from a stationary what? Position. Bats are considered the most efficient of all animals that fly. You see, bats, they are very energetic. They use just a slightly different wings motion than birds and insects in order to take what? Flight and stay in what? Air. Okay, let's now look at insects. The way insects fly differs from how bird and what? Bats fly. Why? Bird and bats get most of their lift from where? Downstroke of their wing movement, but insects also get lift from upstroke. Insects use the rapid movement of their wings in a figure 8 motion to achieve what? Flight. While bird is going flap, 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 insect on the other hand is going up and shaking it. As it's shaking it, it's generating what? Some amount of what? Lift. Okay? So some flies and wasps will flap their wings up to 1,000 times per second. That is why they fly the way they fly. Unlike bird or bat, insects are capable of what? Hovering in one place like what? An helicopter. When insects want to fly, when insects want to fly forward, they tilt their bodies down and forward, and when they want to hover, they pull their head back and what? Upward. It really is quite amazing how the insect wing, although it has no muscle or bone inside and is made of really thin materials, they can still what? Lift their oversized bodies. Overall, insects achieve flight mainly from the design of wings and how rapidly they move them. Is it not? Yes. And I want you to watch this interesting video, learn more about forces of flight and how they work against each other.
Today we're talking about the four forces of flight, how these gigantic machines get off the ground. So how does an airplane actually get into the air, and what forces are acting upon it when it's flying through the air? So there's four fundamental forces. We'll focus on each one. As we see this gigantic Boeing 747 lift off the ground, there's four fundamental things that are acting on it, the same as the four forces that are acting upon our little Piper Cherokee here as it rolls down the runway and takes off. We'll get right to it. So let's define the four forces that are always acting upon an airplane, whether it's taking off, flying through the air, or coming in for a landing. The four forces are thrust, which comes from the engines, the propeller or the jet engine, drag, that tries to slow the airplane down and fights against those engines, the lift, keeping the airplane in the air, what's holding it up, the wings, and the weight of the airplane. Notice we don't say gravity, but we say weight of the airplane acting in the opposite direction, fighting against that lift, trying to pull the airplane down towards the ground. Now it's important to note that these forces don't ever bend or change the angle that they're pulling in. Thrust will always directly oppose drag, and lift will always directly oppose weight. So regardless of the bank or the pitch of the aircraft, you're always going to have lift directly opposing weight and thrust directly opposing drag. Now let's take a look at these forces as they act upon the airplane as we're flying along straight and level here, say at 100 miles an hour, and we have our four forces all in equilibrium. The airplane's level at 1,000 feet and 100 miles an hour, and then we accelerate the airplane, say to 150 miles per hour, and as we speed it up, as we accelerate it, then we must have more thrust than drag as it accelerates. Now once we get to say 150 miles per hour and we're stable again at cruising along at 150, then we're back to the four forces being in equilibrium. Lift equals weight, and thrust is equaling drag. We're stable at 150 miles per hour and 1,000 feet. Now let's go ahead and look at the four forces when we're climbing or descending. And so here's the tricky part. If we take our airplane and we want to start climbing, say we're at 1,000 feet, we're going to go ahead and go up to 2,000 feet. Then we need to accelerate upward, generate more lift than weight, and the airplane starts accelerating upward. Now once we get to say 500 feet per minute up, weight and lift will then equal again, and we'll continue to climb upward. So we are climbing, getting higher, but we're not accelerating upward. So the four forces are always equal when you're in unaccelerated flight. Unaccelerated. So if you're stable at 100 miles per hour and 500 feet a minute going up, then the four forces are equal. Lift equals weight, thrust equals drag. If you're decelerating, accelerating, or if you go ahead and stop climbing from say 500 feet per minute and level off, then momentarily your lift will be less than weight so that you can decelerate your upward motion and level off at say 2,000 feet here. And then you resume level unaccelerated flight and the four forces go back to being equal. So as we look at our Piper Cherokee here rolling down the runway, as we accelerate down the runway we have more thrust than drag, the airplane's increasing its speed, and we don't quite have enough lift to get off the ground, so we have less lift than weight until eventually we have enough airspeed to generate enough lift, we get more lift than weight, and the aircraft leaves the ground, starts climbing upward. And then eventually, once we're established in climbing flight, the four forces are equal. We're stable at 85 miles per hour, and we're climbing at, say, 500 feet per minute, and everything's stable. The four forces are equal as we're climbing upward. Now, even as we approach to land here, the four forces are actually equal. We're descending at 500 feet per minute, our airspeed's stable at 80 miles per hour, and as we come down and get closer to the ground, we'll start to ease back on the controls. That increases our lift on the wings, decelerating us as we come down to the ground to try to level off close to the ground. It also increases drag, which makes the airspeed slow, so that we touch down right about 60 miles per hour and as close to a 0 rate feet per minute descent as possible. And as we roll out here, drag is greater than thrust because of the power is at idle and we're applying brakes, and the aircraft slows down. It generates less and less lift and settles down onto the wheels and stays nice and stable on the ground. What you ultimately need to remember here is that there's four forces that act upon every airplane flying through the air: lift, weight, thrust and drag, and those four forces are often equal unless the airplane is accelerating, either up, down, or forwards or backwards. If it's an unaccelerated flight, all four forces are equal, even if it's climbing or descending. Hope you found this helpful.
Welcome back for the video. I believe we now know that air as a particle has mass, and you now know the difference between mass and weight. You now know the four forces of flight. You now know Newton's three laws of motion. You now know Bernoulli's principle, and you also know how and why birds and insects fly. We are going to look at why can't we fly in our next class. Until then, complete your assignments or your quizzes. Okay, stay safe. I'll see you soon.